Hey there, history buffs. Welcome back to Echoes of the Past, where we dive deep into the stories that shaped our world. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most underrated eras in history. Buckle up, because we're about to take a trip back in time to, drumroll please, the medieval period. Yes, you heard me right. The medieval period, often brushed aside as the Dark Ages, was actually a time of incredible progress, innovation, and yes, even a little bit of fun. Let's get into it. Now, when you hear medieval period, you probably think of knights in shining armor, damsels in distress, and perhaps a dragon or two. But trust me, there's so much more to this era than just chainmail and chivalry. We're talking about a time that spanned from the 5th to the late 15th century, covering roughly 1,000 years of human history. And despite what your high school history teacher might have told you, the Middle Ages were far from dark. First off, let's talk about the economy. The medieval period saw the rise of trade and commerce like never before. Medieval markets were the Amazon Prime of their day, minus the 2-day shipping, of course. People from different regions would come together to trade goods, share ideas, and sometimes just gossip about the latest royal scandal. Think of it as the original social network, but with fewer cat videos, and it wasn't just local trade. The Silk Road connected Europe to Asia, bringing spices, silk, and precious metals across continents. This trade route was the backbone of the medieval economy, and it played a huge role in cultural exchange. Imagine getting a silk scarf from China in exchange for some Venetian glass. Pretty cool, right? Speaking of cool, let's talk about education and science. Contrary to popular belief, the medieval period wasn't just about knights and castles. It was also a time of great intellectual growth. Monasteries became the epicenters of learning, preserving ancient texts and producing new knowledge. Universities like Oxford and Cambridge were founded during this time, and scholars made significant advances in fields like astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Sure, medieval medicine might seem a bit crude by today's standards. Bloodletting, anyone? But medieval doctors laid the groundwork for modern medical practices. They experimented with herbal remedies, performed surgeries, and even understood the importance of hygiene, well, sort of. Let's just say they were a step up from the ancient Romans, who thought bathing in lead pipes was a good idea, and let's not forget about the art and architecture. The medieval period gave us some of the most stunning cathedrals, castles, and manuscripts in history. Gothic architecture, with its pointed arches, ribbed vaults, and flying buttresses, is nothing short of breathtaking. These structures weren't just buildings, they were symbols of faith, power, and creativity. But it wasn't all work and no play. Medieval festivals were the ultimate parties. Picture this: music, dancing, feasting, and maybe a jousting tournament or two. People knew how to have a good time. These festivals were a chance for everyone to let loose, forget about their troubles, and celebrate life. Kind of like a medieval Coachella, but with more turkey legs and fewer flower crowns. Now, let's talk about law and order. Medieval justice might seem harsh by today's standards, but it was surprisingly sophisticated. Trial by jury, legal precedents, and even some of our modern legal principles have their roots in the Middle Ages. And yes, while there were some pretty gruesome punishments, medieval law was more about maintaining social order than anything else. Think of it as an early version of Judge Judy, but with more axes and fewer TV cameras, and of course, we can't talk about the medieval period without mentioning warfare. The Middle Ages were a time of knights, castles, and epic battles. But it wasn't just about brute force. Medieval warfare was a complex art, involving strategy, diplomacy, and sometimes even a bit of espionage. And let's be honest, who doesn't love a good castle siege scene? So, there you have it. The medieval period was far from the dark and dreary time it's often made out to be. It was 1,000 years of innovation, culture, and yes, a little bit of chaos. But that's what makes it so fascinating. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the most underrated era in history, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what historical period you'd like us to cover next. Until then, keep exploring the past to understand the present. See you next time.